Hey everybody, it's Karen with Access to Tanzania. Today's pre-departure video is all about exchanging money and tipping. So let's get started. So a lot of people will ask us, how much money should I bring? How much money should I exchange? All of those things. So let's start at the beginning. And the basics is this. You can readily use US dollar throughout your safari experience. You don't need to exchange all of your money into Tanzanian shillings. In fact, it's better to keep the majority of your bills in US dollar for a variety of reasons. First, US dollar is accepted broadly. Second, the exchange rate of like US dollar to Tanzanian shillings means that you'll have a really large amount of Tanzanian shillings, a very bulky stack. Think of it this way. 100 US dollars to Tanzanian shillings is like saying taking one bill and getting a stack of $5 bills or more, really. So again, the bulk factor is a consideration around it. But it's nice to have some local currency because if you like to go to local markets and make purchases that are outside the realm of your property, some Tanzanian shillings will be helpful. So some rules to go by. First, bills that you bring from the US should be newer issue, 2009 or newer, undamaged, and by undamaged, like not ripped or wrinkled or stamped, because then they wouldn't be accepted. Even if you use that bill for a tip, somebody who goes to a bank to use that bill might be rejected. So just make sure they're in good condition. Where can you get Tanzanian shillings? The easiest place to get the shillings that you might want to exchange would be at the airport, right when you are near customs. There's some bank windows there that you can get some Tanzanian shillings, or in town, Arusha town area, banks or ATMs. Once you're out on the safari circuit, you will not have access to banks or ATMs any longer. So that really has to be done at the beginning of your journey. Now, if you're traveling onward to Zanzibar, as an example, when you pass through Stone Town area en route to the beach, for example, you could stop at a bank or ATM to replenish some of your cash needs. And just keep in mind that when you get money out of an ATM, it is dispensing in local currency. In terms of how much money to exchange, we would say about $100 per couple or $50 per person. The reason being, again, is it gets really bulky. And then if you are charged incidentals at a lodge, they will probably tally it in Tanzanian shillings and then convert to US dollar and give you a US dollar rate. And then if you need change, you'll get change back in shillings. So there's sort of a natural accumulation of shillings along the way. So after the topic of exchanging money, there's always the question about tipping. So the question is, who should I tip? So there's three main categories here: your main safari guide, your activity guide, and accommodation staff. Your main safari guide, we give a range of tipping per person per day, anywhere between $12 and $22 per person per day. And depending on the size of your group, if you're a group of 2 people, you might lean towards the higher end of that spectrum. If you're a really large group with one guide, you might go a little bit to the lower end of the spectrum of that range. But tipping is highly personal. So you should pick an amount that you're comfortable with, and of course, one that you could adjust based on your satisfaction. The other question that we get a lot about tipping your main guide is, when should you tip him? It's customary to tip your guide at the end of your time with him. So perhaps the last morning before you fly off, or maybe a last evening or dinner. Sometimes people are concerned about carrying a lot of extra cash. We're just not used to carrying cash a lot anymore these days. And so one guest a while back had given me their thoughts that they were going to maybe give half their tip to their guide at the beginning and half at the end, so that they could unburden themselves from carrying as much cash. You could do that if you want. It's a good suggestion, but you should do whatever feels comfortable. But customarily, at the end is the norm. I would probably forget if you did it daily. Did I do it yesterday? I don't remember, things like that. An activity guide would be somebody other than your main guide who conducts something like a guided bushwalk, a cultural visit, etc. And the numbers we give are per group. So if there's, you might give $20 as a group to an activity guide. And then the accommodation staff, usually at the reception area, there's a centralized tip box, and you put a gratuity in that's shared broadly among the staff. We give a recommendation of about $5 to $10 per person per day. If there's somebody that goes above and beyond, you're more than welcome to give them a direct gratuity. However, the centralized tip box is really meant to help avoid the necessity of gratuities at every interaction. But again, if somebody does something fantastic and you want to show your appreciation, go for it. No problem at all. So those are some of the basic questions that we most commonly get around tipping and currency. You can always feel free to ask us more questions before you depart, but I hope that this was helpful. As we like to say, Safari and Jema, have a great trip and enjoy your adventure.